Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to discuss with you the topic on obesity. But prior to this lecture class, I would like to know that there is an introductory chapter on non-communicable diseases. Please read them because I have not tried to read them because it is self-explanatory and most of it is full of data. So what I would like you to know is you read the chapter because subsequently when we are trying to put MCQ questions, there will be some questions from those chapters. Initial first chapter from non-communicable diseases, epidemiology of non-communicable diseases and chronic conditions. So the first chapter which are not taken, please read them in case you get MCQs subsequently for the exam. So you can see the picture. We are dealing with obesity, extremely morbid obesity. It is not your fate line, but your waistline that determines your longevity. Most often we Indians blame our fate line for our longevity, but it's often our waistline. And with our waistline, it determines how long we are going to live on this earth, especially in our country. Again, extreme morbid obesity in children. Obesity. Obesity has been defined as abnormal growth of the adipose tissue due to the enlargement of the fat cell size. So, if the fat cell is enlarged, it is called as hypertrophic obesity. And if there is an increase in fat cell number, it is called hypoplastic obesity, or it can be a combination of both. So, obesity can be hypertrophic obesity, hypoplastic obesity, or it can be a combination of both hypertrophic and hypoplastic obesity. Obesity is often expressed in terms of body mass index, which all of us know and we try to do whenever we determine the height and weight of a patient in either in a hospital or of a person in a family in community. So you have the weights and heights table where which shows the column shows the column on the left hand side shows the height in centimeters, and BMI is on the topmost on the right side. So 18.5 to 24.9 is a normal weight or normal BMI. So BMI is measured by height by weight by height in meters square. So anything less than 18.5 is underweight or thinness, and above more than or equal to 25 is overweight. So our weight usually should be between 18.5 to 25.5 BMI, which is expressed as kg per meter square. So our range should be, suppose if your height is 130 centimeters, you should have a BMI between 36.2, you should have a body weight between 36.2 to 49 kgs. So if it is the height is 140 centimeters, so that you will have an ideal BMI of 18.5 to 24.99. Overweight is usually due to obesity, but can arise from a number of other causes such as abnormal muscle development or fluid retention. So abnormal muscle development, as we see in weightlifters, or abnormal fluid retention, as in case of ascites, as in case of congestive cardiac failure in different parts of the body, then this may result in increase in weight. So according to BMI, if it is more than or equal to 25 kg per meter square, and it is called as overweight. So overweight again is divided into number of grades or classes, which I am discussing with you later. Obese individuals differ not only in the amount of excess fat that they store, but in also the regional distribution of fat within the body. So it's not only the fat where it is stored, but also in the distribution of fat. Where is the fat exactly, in which part of the body it is located, that is very important. So the distribution of fat induced by weight gain affects the risk associated with obesity and the kind of disease that results. So the fat distribution, whether it is on the gluteus muscle or whether it is in the abdomen, that will decide what kind of disease and what kind of risk that we may have later. So accordingly, it is very important to understand what is the type of distribution of fat in the body. So it is useful therefore to distinguish between those who are at increased risk as a result of abdominal fat distribution or android obesity. So abdominal fat distribution is typically found in males. That's why it is called as android obesity or the male type of obesity. On the less serious gynoid fat distribution, the fat is evenly and peripherally distributed around the body. So gynoid fat distribution is mostly around evenly and peripherally distributed around the body compared to android obesity or central obesity or abdominal obesity. Fat distribution, android obesity, the distinction between the android obesity and the gynecoid obesity or gynoid obesity. So android obesity is often called apple-shaped type of obesity. It is apple-shaped and it is central distribution, abdominal, high intraperitoneal fat content, increased neck circumference, weight ratio more than 0.8 in women and more than 1 in men, increased morbidity, that is airways, cardiovascular system, metabolic, surgical. Gynecoid obesity is pear-shaped obesity and it is mostly peripheral in distribution and in the peripheral sites like arms, legs and buttocks. Problem statement. Obesity is perhaps the most prevalent form of malnutrition. So malnutrition can be undernutrition or overnutrition, and obesity is seen as the most prevalent form of malnutrition throughout the globe. So overweight and obesity are the fifth leading risk of global deaths. Worldwide obesity, now the better statistics about obesity. Worldwide, the obesity has been doubled since 1980. In 2016, there are 1.9 million adults 18 years and older were overweight. Of these, 650 million people, men and women, were obese. In 2016, more than 41 million children under 5 years of age were overweight or obese. Once considered a high-income problem, obesity was generally considered people those who are having huge amount of money or having high incomes. So overweight and obesity are now rising in low-income countries and middle-income countries, particularly in urban settings. So earlier it was thought it was mainly confined to high-income countries, but now it is seen that obesity is gradually rising in low-income countries and middle-income countries, particularly in urban settings or in urban areas. Close to 30 million overweight children are living in developing countries and 10 million adults, 10 million in developed countries. At least 3.4 million children, adults die every year as a result of being overweight or obese. In addition, 44% of the diabetes burden, 23% of the ischemic heart disease, and between 7 to 41% of the certain cancer burdens are attributable to overweight and obesity. So overweight and obesity result in cancers, diabetes, hypertension, all and cardiovascular diseases. In India, the NCD risk factor survey phase 2 was carried out in the year 2007-8 in the states of AP, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttarakhand, and Mizoram. What did this survey show exactly? It showed the high of prevalence of overweight in all the age groups except in 15 to 24 years group. Overweight prevalence was higher among females, than in urban areas than in rural areas. Low prevalence was recorded among lower levels of education, illiterate and primary levels, and in people whose occupation was connected with agriculture and manual work. In India, 1.3% males and 2.5% females aged more than 20 years were obese in the year 2008. So these statistics around the world and in our country show the number of people in the world who are becoming obese and overweight. So as we see that obesity is a key risk factor in the natural history of other chronic and non-communicable diseases, the typical time sequence of chronic disease following the increased prevalence of obesity is important in public health planning. So in order to understand, to have a perfect community or a healthy community, it is necessary to understand how people are having overweight and obesity, which in turn may lead to chronic non-communicable diseases. So it's very important for public health planning that how many people are actually overweight or obese. The first adverse effects of obesity to emerging population transition are hypertension, hyperlipidemia, glucose intolerance. While coronary heart disease, long-term complications of diabetes mellitus and renal failure begin to emerge several years or decades later. It's a matter of time before same mortality rates for the disease will be seen in developing countries as those prevailing 30 years ago in industrialized countries. So childhood obesity, this results in the consumption of micronutrient poor, high energy dense foods like potatoes, chips, drinks, high energy drinks, a lot of vegetables, a lot of foods which are more in oily snacks. All this may result in childhood obesity. So this is very important that the parent should not give these to a child. So what are the epidemiological determinants? They can be under these various headings as seen in this particular diagram. So epidemiological determinants basically are divided into non-modifiable risk factors and modifiable risk factors, which you understand. Epidemiological determinants are nothing but risk factors for the particular disease. So non-modifiable risk factors are factors which cannot be changed, which cannot be modified, which are immutable, like age, sex, genetic factors, familial tendency, and ethnicity. Modifiable risk factors are which can be changed, which can be modified, which can be there can be a lot of interventions like physical inactivity, socioeconomic status, eating habits, psychosocial factors, different factors, alcohol, education, smoking, and drugs. Obesity can occur at any age and it gradually increases with age. Infants with excessive weight gain have an increased incidence of obesity in later life. About 1/3 of obese adults have been since childhood. It has been well established that most adipose cells are formed early in life, and the obese infant lays down more of these cells than the normal infant. So, it has been found that in children who are obese, their obesity is found to occur in them later in their adult life. So, and it is very important that obesity is controlled since childhood, and obesity is a factor that can occur in any age, and it increases usually with age. Hypoplastic obesity, that is increase in fat cell number in adults, is extremely difficult to treat with conventional methods. Sex. Women generally have higher rate of obesity than men, although men may have higher rates of overweight. So men can be more overweight compared to women who can be comparatively more obese than men. It has been claimed that women's BMI increases with successive pregnancies. The recent evidence suggests that increase is likely to be on average about 1 kg per pregnancy. So obesity increases with successive pregnancies, and it has been seen that it will increase up to 1 kg. On the other hand, in many developing countries, consecutive pregnancies at short intervals often lead to weight loss than weight gain, as we see in our country. So multiple pregnancies or successive pregnancies, one followed by the other, this may result in weight loss compared to weight gain in a woman, that is seen in many developing countries. Field studies have shown a close relation between the weights of identical twins even when they are reared in dissimilar environments. So if we are seeing in genetic factors, what we find in twins especially is, even if they are raised or even if they are brought up in two different countries, there is a close relation between their weights. Suppose one is growing in India and another is growing in US, what we find is there is increase in weight in both of them. The profile of fat distribution is also characterized by a significant heritable level of the order of 50% of the total human variation. Recent studies have shown that the amount of abdominal fat was influenced by a genetic component, accounting for 50 to 60% of the individual differences. So, the amount of abdominal fat was influenced by genetic component, and so abdominal fat distribution is also influenced by the genes that are present in a person. So, we have discussed age, genetic factors, physical inactivity. There is convincing evidence that regular physical activity is protective against unhealthy weight gain. Whereas sedentary lifestyle, particularly sedentary occupation and inactive recreation such as watching TV, promote it. So when we see that when we have a sedentary occupation mostly confined to the desk or the desktop, or simply watching TV, they promote obesity. Others like physical activity and physical fitness are important modifiers of mortality and morbidity related to overweight and obesity. So physical activity is very, very important. At least 5 days a week or at least 6 days a week is very, very important, or at least 20 to 30 minutes per day. In some individuals, a major reduction in activity without the compensated decrease in habitual energy intake may be the major cause of increased obesity. So, what it happens is many times people who do who reduce their activity, reduce their physical activity without decreasing in their food intake or energy intake, this may lead to increased obesity. So, regulated physical exercise, regulated dietary intake, or energy intake is very, very important. So, physical inactivity causes obesity, which in turn restricts activity. This is a vicious cycle. One follows the other. So, it is the reduced energy output that is probably more important etiology of obesity that used to be thought. So, one has to exercise. If the output of energy is reduced in a person, and if the consumption of food is more, then there is no decrease in weight of the person, rather there is an increase in obesity in the person. So proportionate decrease in the dietary consumption, followed by increased exercise, proportionate increase in exercise helps in reducing weight, overweight, and thereby obesity. Socioeconomic status. As I said earlier, obesity was confined usually to high-income countries or higher economic status, and nowadays it is seen in lower income countries and middle-income countries, especially in urban settings. So here also what we find is there is a clear direct relationship between socioeconomic status and obesity. In some affluent countries, obesity can be seen more prevalent in lower socioeconomic groups. That's what is observed nowadays. So obesity, which was confined to higher socioeconomic groups, now it is found in lower socioeconomic groups. Eating habits. Eating habits are established very early in life. So whatever we try to eat early in life and whatever we are taught to eat early in life continues even in adulthood. So it's very important that we need to train our children who are regular food habits from the very beginning of their life. So a child who is accustomed to the family diet, which is involving a lot of proteins, more of unrefined foods, more of fiber foods, more of vegetables, more of fruits, has a very good chance of developing healthy lifestyle and preventing obesity. So eating habits are established very early in life, and the onus or responsibility lies with the parents or the caretakers to initiate these habits in children. The composition of the diet, the periodicity which is eaten, and the amount of energy derived from it are all relevant to the etiology of obesity. So a diet containing more energy than needed may lead to postprandial hyperlipidemia and the deposition of triglycerides in adipose tissue resulting in obesity. So if you consume a diet more in energy, so it may lead to postprandial hyperlipidemia, and this will lead to deposition of triglycerides. So whatever food we are supposed to take depends upon postprandial hyperlipidemia and to deposition of triglycerides in the adipose tissue resulting in obesity. Nowadays, TV and print media is playing an important role in promoting obesity by heavy advertisement of fast food outlets of energy-dense, micronutrient-poor food and beverages of multinational companies which influence the daily eating habits. So it has been seen that the print media and the TV are very important as far as this understanding of obesity is concerned, and mostly they promote obesity among the children. So the children usually pick up those bad habits and they have this particular problem. The consumer demand by itself may be influenced by advertising, marketing, culture, fashion, and convenience. Psychosocial factors. So they're deeply involved in the etiology of obesity. So obesity and overeating, usually overeating may be a symptom of depression, anxiety, frustration, and loneliness in childhood as in adult life. Excessively obese individuals are usually withdrawn, self-conscious, lonely, and secret eaters. And inside the circumstances in which obesity has developed is essential for planning the most suitable management. Familial tendencies. Obesity usually runs in families, but this is not necessarily solely explained by the influence of genes. So parents who are obese will most likely to have hello. Obesity usually runs in families, but it is not necessarily explained by the influence of genes. Endocrine factors, they may be involved in occasional cases. Example, Cushing syndrome, growth hormone deficiency, smoking. Smokers may compare less than ex-smokers. Individuals who have never smoked at all, someone fought between the two. So smoking, in fact, causes decrease in the weight of the person's ethnicity. So ethnic groups in many industrialized countries appear to be especially susceptible to the development of obesity and its complications. Evidence suggests that this may be due to genetic predisposition to obesity, and that only becomes apparent when such groups are exposed to a more affluent lifestyle. Drugs like corticosteroids, contraceptives, insulin. Hello? No, check. Okay, నేను క్లాస్లో ఉన్నాను, తర్వాత నేను మాట్లాడతాను. Corticosteroids, contraceptives, insulin, beta-adrenergic blockers can promote weight gain. Look at the shape of things to come. How people in the primitive ages now become obese with the passage of time, and how our eating patterns and other lifestyles increase that. Help in promoting obesity. Use of BMI to classify obesity. Body mass index is a simple index, as I said earlier. It is by weight by height. It is commonly used to underweight, and it is age independent, and it is commonly used to classify underweight, overweight, or obesity in adults. It is the weight in kgs divided by the height in meters squared. The WHO classification is primarily based on the association between BMI and mortality. The BMIs are usually age independent. As I said earlier, BMI is age independent because it takes into account only on weight and height, and it is the same for both the sexes. So underweight is less than 18.5 kg per meter square, and the risk of comorbidity is low. Normal range is 18.5 to 24.99. It is average, and overweight is more than or equal to 25. Pre-obese is 25 to 29.99. Obese class 1, grade 1, 30 to 34.99. And again, the risk of morbidity increases. So what we find is the morbidities, risk of morbidities increase with the passage of time, with the passage of, with the increase in BMI. So obese class 2 is severe, that is 35 to 39.99. And obese class 3 is more than or equal to 40 kg per meter square. And the risk of comorbidity is very severe. So comorbidities are generally hypertension, diabetes mellitus, or it can be kidney problems or cardiovascular disease. So categories of overweight that is given over here. So you see the BMI. On the left hand side, you see a highly muscular person. On the other hand, you see a highly obese person. So both the BMIs are equal. BMI sometimes can be misleading. So we have other parameters of obesity estimation. So intra-abdominal fat accumulation and increases. Why intra-abdominal fat or under type of fat deposition is so risky? I will explain you now. So compared with subcutaneous adipose tissue, intra-abdominal adipose tissue has more cells per unit mass. That is hypoplastic obesity. There is more amount of fat cells per unit mass, higher blood flow, more glucocorticoid receptors, and greater catecholamine-induced lipolysis. So that's why the abdominal adipose tissue is very resistant to decrease, and it is the last part of the body where the fat actually takes a lot of time to decrease, and it is last to decrease, this type of obesity. These differences make intra-abdominal adipose tissue more susceptible to normal stimulation and changes in accumulation and metabolism. Furthermore, intra-abdominal adipocytes are located upstream from liver in the total circulation. This means there is a marked increase in the flux of non-esterified fatty acid to the liver via the portal blood in patients with abdominal obesity. There is a good evidence that abdominal obesity is important in the development of insulin resistance and in the metabolic syndrome that link obesity with CHD. So we should understand that if there is an increased waist circumference, which will lead to increase, which is in turn is due to increased abdominal obesity or under type of obesity, this may lead to metabolic syndrome. So what is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is nothing but hyperinsulinemia, dyslipidemia, glucose intolerance, and hypertension. So these are the four. It's also known as the syndrome X. These are the four features, or the four conditions which appear in metabolic syndrome, or four diseases which may appear in metabolic syndrome. Premenopausal women have quantitatively more lipoprotein lipase and increased lipoprotein lipase activity in the gluteal and femoral subcutaneous regions, which contain high fat cells larger than those in men, but these differences disappear after menopause. Central obesity, intra-abdominal obesity, and increased risk, insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. coronary heart disease. So what we find, as I told you earlier, so simple obesity will lead to insulin resistance. This will lead to dyslipidemia. This may lead to atherosclerosis. This may lead to glucose intolerance. This may lead to metabolic syndrome. And this metabolic syndrome will also result in, all this will again result in coronary heart disease. So assessment of obesity is usually by these various ways. As you know, body composition is active mass, the fatty mass, extracellular fluid, and the connective tissue. The state of obesity is characterized by an increase in fatty mass at the expense of other masses of the other parts of the body. The water content of the body is never decreased in obesity. The most widely used criteria are body weight. Body weight, though not an accurate measure of excess of fat, is widely used as index. The epidemiological studies is convinced to accept 2 standard deviations from the median weight for height as a cutoff point for overweight and 3 standard deviations for obesity. So if you find mean plus or minus 2 standard deviation, it is normal. Anything above mean plus or minus 2 standard deviation, it is overweight. And between 2 standard deviations and 3 standard deviation, it is known as obesity. So very important that 2 standard deviation, if you cross about plus or minus 2 standard deviation, especially plus 2 standard deviation, we call it as overweight, and plus 3 standard deviation is known as obesity. For adults, some people calculate various indicators such as, the indicators as given below, body mass index, weight by height in meters square, compound index, height in centimeters. Remember, body mass index quidlets is also known as quidlets index, where the height is taken in case as meters, square. Whereas Ponderal index, the height is taken as centimeters, and it is a cube root divided by the cube root of weight. Broca index is height minus 100. Lorentz formula is height in centimeters minus 100 minus height centimeters minus 150 divided by 2 or 4 for men. Corpulence index is actual weight by desired weight. This should not exceed 1.2. BMI and the Broca index are widely used because they're very easy to calculate. Broca index is nothing but your height in centimeters minus 100. This will be your ideal weight. A Food and Agricultural Organization, World Health Organization, and UNO report gives the much needed reference, which I said earlier. So here the BMI 18.5 to 24.9. So if you have a height of 140 centimeters, the weight should be between 36.2 to 49 kgs. This is how you can say whether you have a normal BMI or an abnormal BMI. Skin fold thickness. A large proportion of the total body fat is located under the skin. So one is body weight, second is skin fold thickness. Since it is the most inaccessible, the method used is measurement of skin fold thickness. It's a rapid and a non-invasive method for assessing body fat. Several varieties of calipers are available for the purpose, which are used in the measurement of skin fold thickness. Usually the skin fold thickness measurements are taken at the foresides, mid triceps, biceps, subscapular, suprailiac regions. Some of all these measurements should be less than 40 millimeters in boys and less than 50 millimeters in girls. So unfortunately, standards for surveillance do not exist for comparison. The main drawback of skin fold thickness is the poor repeatability. In the sense that if you measure now and you you get a one reading, and if you measure later, you get another reading. So it's the poor repeatability of this measurement which doesn't make it very popular or ideal for assessing obesity in a person. So this is a picture of Harpendon's calipers. So more than 40 millimeters in case of boys and more than 50 millimeters in case of girls will give you the, will tell you whether the person is obese or not. Waist circumference and waist hip ratio. This is very important and it is a better indicator compared to weight and skin fold thickness. So waist circumference is measured at the midpoint between the lower border of the rib cage and the ear crest. So this corresponds to if you pass a tape around your navel or around your umbilicus, and the tape should be parallel to that of your ground on which the person is standing. So circularly, if you place a tape at the level of umbilicus or the navel, and if it is parallel to the floor on which the person is standing, that gives the exact waist circumference. It is a convenient and simple measurement that is unrelated to height, correlates closely with BMI and waist hip ratio, and it is an approximate index of intra-abdominal fat and total body fat. So it is a very important indicator of intra-abdominal fat, or abdominal fat, and android obesity and total body fat. Changes in the waist circumference reflects changes in the risk factors for cardiovascular diseases and other forms of chronic diseases. There is an increased risk of metabolic complications for men with waist circumference more than 102 centimeters and women with a waist circumference of more than 88 centimeters. So yeah, so my dear boys and girls, it should be very important that you should be taking care of your waist. In the beginning of the class, I told you it is the waistline that determine your fate rather than your fate lines. Other fate lines. So weight lines determine your longevity compared to your fate lines. So waist circumference is very, very important. So the opening sentences very well helps us to understand in this lecture that waist circumference is so important that one should not exceed 102 centimeters, especially in men, and more than 88 centimeters in case of women. And waist hip ratio should not be more than more than 1 in case of men. It should not be more than 0.85 in case of women. And if it is more than 1 or 0.85 women, it indicates abdominal fat accumulation or obesity. So this is how it is measured. So if you measure, that is the at the level of navel, it is the waist circumference, and if you measure at the widest part of the gluteus or the buttocks, then it is the hip circumference. So waist circumference by hip circumference is very, very important for you to understand. Others that which are used, though they may be complicated, they're very complicated and require more scientific tools for measurement, and also laboratories to understand for this measurement, like total body water, total body potassium, body density, measurement of fat cells. What are the hazards of obesity? Increased morbidity and increased mortality. So hazards of obesity will result in increased morbidity, like from coronary heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, gallbladder disease, some types of cancers, hormonally related and large bowel cancers. And it may also result in varicose veins, abdominal hernia, osteoarthritis of knee, hip, and lumbar spine, flat feet, increased risk for surgery, lowered fertility. Now, table in the next slide helps you to understand the health problems associated with obesity. There is a high risk of development of non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus compared to that of in obese persons compared to that of non-obese persons to the extent of more than 3 times. So relative risk is more than 3 implies there is 3 times the risk of developing non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus in obese persons compared to that of non-obese persons. Likewise, there is 1 to 2 times the risk of development of cancers in obese persons compared to that of non-obese persons. In a little risk 1 to 2, that is slightly increased risk. So this is very, very important. As we understand, if the little increases, then we have got other types of problems as shown in this particular table. Increased mortality. So increased mortality means increased deaths. Framingham Heart Study in US shows increase in sudden death among men more than 20%. Overweight due to increased incidence of hypertension and coronary heart disease. There is also excess number of deaths from renal disease. Obesity lowers life expectancy. This is again a picture showing how overweight can result in a lot of health problems, medical complications of obesity. So what are the options that are available in reducing obesity? So usually the WHO expert committee suggests that one should maintain weight within a BMI range of 18.4 to 24.9. It means that people who are overweight, they should reduce at least 5 to 10% of the body weight, and people should not, and normal people should not see that the weight doesn't increase more than 5 kgs in them. So that is what it is meant to be when we say maintenance of weight or the control of obesity. So what are the dietary changes that are required? Decrease in consumption of refined foods, and increase in consumption of unrefined foods, decrease in consumption of foods which are rich in lipids, and increase in consumption of foods which are less in lipids, increase in consumption of food, which is increase in fiber, and avoidance of foods which are rich in trans fatty acids, and micronutrient poor energy dense foods such as fast foods. These are very important for you to prevent obesity, and one has to be very careful with such type of foods. So increased physical activity is very, very important. One has to modify their sedentary lifestyle. One has to exercise at least 20 minutes, 5 days to 6 days in a week. And other ways of decreasing obesity are appetite suppressing drugs like phentermine or either dithialpropion or surgical treatment like gastric bypass, gastroplasty or jaw wiring. Above all, it's very important that health education should be given to people who are suffering from obesity regarding their healthy lifestyles, regarding the dietary changes, regarding the physical activity, and regarding food stuff they should be consuming. Health education is very important. Apart from this, constant motivation is required for the person to decrease weight and prevent overweight and obesity. So it's very important that one should prevent obesity at all costs and see that obesity is prevalent. So these are the types of food one should consume: the healthy eating pyramid, the gastric banding. So evolution has resulted, and the revolution, what is resulted in people. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you very much.